Hey you guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I want to talk about some books that I have recently read. I'm thinking about turning my channel, or at least having some of the content that I produce on my channel be about books, because books is just something that I really love. I love reading. It's just one of my favorite things to do. I love to collect books. I actually hope to one day have like a library in my house, like my own private library. And so I love to collect books and I love to read books. I really want a lot of my content to express me and who I am. And so some things may seem boring to other people, but I can only enjoy making videos on this channel that reflect truly the things that I love. And so I love books, and so I want to talk about books on my channel. And yeah, so one thing that's kind of popular on BookTube, on the book part of YouTube, is people making videos where they talk about books that they read for the month. And so that's what I want to do. I want to start that for the month of April. This video is not me talking about the books that I read in the month of April, because at the time that I'm recording this, we still have 3 days left in April and I'm still getting through 2 books. So I've already read, I think, like 3 or 4 books in the month of April, and I still have 2 more books that I'm completing. But these are books that I've read prior to April, because I just don't want to neglect some of the good books and some of the books I didn't really like. Prior to April, I want to be able to just like talk about some of those books as well and not just like forget about them. So that's why I'm making this video. So the next video I make about books will be books that I read in the month of April. Then after that, I'll do books that I read in the month of May. Yeah. I'm in college and I'm about to graduate and I still don't know my month, so that's that. Okay, let's just not prolong this intro anymore and let's just get into the video. So the book that I probably need to mention first is Award Gifts, because technically it was the first fiction book I read in almost 4 years, because when I started college, I just did not have time to just read books for leisure. I could only really read books that were either self-help books. I felt comfortable with reading Christian books to help me grow spiritually in my relationship with God, and books that had to do with the courses that I was taking. And with that being said, I really did not read any fiction books. I finally felt comfortable enough to read fiction books again, and the first book that I read, because it was so short, was Award Gifts. This book is by Orson Scott Card, the same person who wrote Ender's Game. In fact, this book is actually a part of the Ender Game series. It's not a part of the original quartet, the original 4 books. It's like a short story that was written like after them, but this one could technically be considered book 1.5. So it'd be like the book you would read in between book 1 and book 2. I do have the other 4 books of Ender's Game. I've only read the first one, and my mom surprised me for Christmas or my birthday, the whole set, and so I really am excited to read them over the summer. I'm also really excited to read Lord of the Rings and the rest of the books in that series, if it's even considered a series. So yeah, this is the first one I read. It was really good. It's very interesting because it does have the original characters, of course, from Ender's Game, but we get to know about this new character who's like the main character in this book, who's like this boy who's really religious. He is not really for war, and it's really interesting. It's really good. I really love Orson Scott Card's writing. Like, one of my favorite things about his writing is his characters and the way we get to be in their head. I like how complex his characters are. He makes his characters really complex, and I really love that. I think Orson Scott Card does a really good job of not making his characters so one-dimensional, and I love it. So I should probably rate these books, and I'm going to rate this book, Award Gifts, which I really thoroughly enjoyed. I thought it was really good. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a 5 out of 5. Like, I legit loved this book, and it was really short. I read it like in 2 hours. The next book I have here was so disappointing, you guys. That is The Pearl by John Steinbeck. Okay, so I love John Steinbeck's book of Mice and Men. Why was that so hard to say? And so I was really excited to read The Pearl, because one, The Pearl, I knew immediately when I saw the name that it was like symbolic of the parable in the Bible called The Pearl. It's not technically the same The same message behind what the pearl means in the Bible versus what it means in the book here is not technically the same. The pearl in the Bible is more like you want to sell everything for the pearl, which is symbolic of the kingdom of God, of the gospel. But in John Steinbeck's book, the pearl represents like greed and just like it was supposed to, I should say, it was supposed to represent like greed. So let me just read you the back of this book and then I'll explain to you why this book just didn't do it for me. So it says, for the diver Kino, finding a magnificent pearl means the promise of better life for his impoverished family. His dream blinds him to the greed and suspicions the pearl arouses in him and his neighbors, and even his loving wife cannot temper his obsession or stem the events leading to tragedy. For Steinbeck, as Linda Wagner Martin writes in her introduction, Kino and his wife illustrate the fall from innocence of people who believe that wealth erases all problems. Listen to me. Y'all, you would think that this book was going to be actually really good because it sounded to me when I read it like it was going to be a really good book. I just imagined it was going to be about two people who were originally living in a life of poverty, like becoming rich based off of finding this pearl and then realizing that, you know, money doesn't buy happiness. That's what you would assume this book was going to be about, but no. First of all, it was not well written in my opinion. It literally, when I read this, I felt like I could have wrote this like in the 10th grade. Like I could have easily wrote this book in 10th grade the night before my assignment was due kind of thing. It felt really rushed. I felt like the overall message of the book kind of changed repeatedly throughout the book, as if he didn't know how he wanted to, like he had the idea of the story but he didn't know how he wanted to execute it. And so you can kind of feel like I felt like as I was reading it, like I could sense that like he didn't really know where he was trying to go with this. Secondly, the guy in the book, I'm going to spoil this book for you a little bit, so if you do want to read it, you should probably fast forward. But yeah, this guy Kino, he's poor. Literally his family really has nothing. His child gets stung by a scorpion. There's this rich doctor that lives in like their town, and he is very racist and prejudiced, and he doesn't like these what are like natives, I guess, or they're just like the people who are poor and they're not of the same, I guess, like ethnicity as this doctor. So he doesn't like them. They want him to treat him. He won't do it. So they're like, okay, we need to go find a pearl, because I guess the people in this town, they would dive for pearls to, you know, make their money. So they wanted to find like a really nice pearl to get all this money, so the doctor would be willing to help their son who was dying, since they would be able to give him a lot of money. When he finds this pearl, it's like the richest, or it's like the best pearl in the world, and he's like, they're asking him like, what is he going to do with this pearl now that he has it? And he's like, I'm going to, you know, get his son, he's going to get his son treated by this doctor. He says that he's going to buy him and his family some clothes and, you know, some nice shoes, because first of all, they literally didn't have any shoes. They didn't have really any clothes beside the clothes they pretty much had on their back. And he said that he wanted him and his wife to actually have a wedding because they were too poor to actually have a real wedding and to actually, I guess, like really get married the right way. So he's like, now that he has this money, that's what he wants to do. He said he wants to be able to put his son in school, and he wants to be able to buy his family like a house, which they don't even live in a house. So he wants normal things. He also said he wants a gun because he wants to be able to protect his family, because they live pretty much like in the wild, and they live in these impoverished places where people are very like cunning and stuff, and, you know, will do anything because they need to be able to survive. So he wants to be able to own a gun to protect his family. So throughout this book, he never ends up getting to sell the pearl. He never ends up getting the riches from the pearl so that he can do these things for his family. He was very ambitious about trying to get to the right place to sell this pearl, because everybody else around him was greedy and were lying to him about how much the price of the pearl really was for, and like everybody else was very dark and weird once he got like this pearl. The book ended up in a really weird tragedy that didn't need to happen. If you read this book, to sum it all up, because I'm babbling and I could babble all day about why this book just wasn't it, the main message that you would actually get from this book when you read it, like if you didn't actually read what the summary said it was supposed to be about, it would sound like John Steinbeck is trying to say that poor people should not want to do better. They should not want to you know, move up in life and want more for their families, especially basic needs. Like he never said he wanted to like do anything that was like extravagant. He just wanted basic life necessities, and that's basically the message you would get from this book, because he tries to just go and get this pearl sold for these things, and bad things just keep happening to him. And it's like, you think that John Steinbeck is trying to say that poor people should just be happy with being poor, which no, you should not be greedy, but I don't think it's wrong for someone, especially if they are living like in a very impoverished lifestyle, to want more for themselves and to be able to do better for their family. So the meaning of the book, the actual execution of the book, everything about it to me was poor. And so I'm gonna have to give this book a 1 out of 5. I gotta be completely honest. It wasn't it for me at all. The next book that we have here is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. This book, you guys, was really, really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Here's the thing. Me and my family love the movie Their Eyes Were Watching God with Halle Berry and the wonderful, beautiful, handsome Michael Ealy. And so when I found out this was a book, I immediately was like, you know what, I need to read it. And it's really good. It is very similar in a lot of ways to the movie, or I should say the movie is very similar in a lot of ways to the book. However, there is one thing that I do not care that much about in the book, and that is the overall character of Janie in the book, because she's a lot more, she's not as strong as her character is in the movie. Even the author of this book, I think she had a lot to do with the overall manner of how the character was portrayed in the movie, and I think even she purposely chose to make her character a lot stronger than she was in the book. I just feel like in today's society, women want to see more stronger female roles, which is why I feel like she and the director of this movie, I should say, chose to make the character a lot more stronger. But in the book, she was not. I have to spoil one. No, should I do it? Okay, I won't necessarily say what really ticked me off in this book, but there was a portion in this book where Tea Cake got a little crazy. Speaking of Tea Cake, I did not trust his character in this book. That's another thing why I prefer the movie to the book, because Tea Cake's in the movie, like, he's respectable to Janie and he really cares about her and he really does want the best for her. In the book, he seems quite problematic to me. He definitely has some toxic traits. I could tell you some of the things that happened in the book that did not happen in the movie that definitely points towards the fact that Tea Cakes was not a perfect man. He did have issues, and that Janie was in a way was desperate for him. That's the vibe you get when you read this book. Like, she's desperate for this man who's this younger guy who just comes to her life, and he loves her, but he definitely had major issues. He definitely had some toxicness. He was definitely a bit toxic. But in the movie, I didn't really pick up that he was toxic. I really do feel like he really loved her, and she definitely was a strong woman. And so those were really interesting to see the differences in between the book and the movie. But the book overall is still really, really good and still worth reading if you have if you have watched the movie before. I would give it a 4.5 out of 5 just because of the fact that my favorite characters are not exactly how I would picture. This book right here was literally all over BookTube and Bookstagram. People, every time I would like watch videos of people just talking about books that they enjoyed or recommend, this book always comes up. It's like a book you will see quite often. And y'all, this book actually was good, but it is crazy. So this book is Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. And okay, I need a moment to just think about how to even talk about what this book is. So this book is about a mother who is trying to figure out what happened to her daughter, who just disappeared out of nowhere suddenly one day, and things just start getting really weird when she starts to date this guy. When the mother starts to date this guy, things just start getting really weird. I really don't know how to explain this book without telling you the details. Like, this is one of those books where you really want to have the experience of reading and figuring out things on your own and not really having someone tell you stuff. Like, if even the littlest details about this book will spoil it for you. It's really crazy. It's crazy. It's definitely some Lifetime movie type stuff, but Lifetime movie rated R, I guess you can say. But yeah, it's a good book. but maybe I should just give you a little read of the summary on the back. So that's what it says. Ellie Mack was the perfect daughter, and then she was gone. 10 years after Ellie's disappearance, her mother, Laurel Mack, is trying to put her life back together when she meets an unexpectedly charming man in a cafe. Before she knows it, she's meeting Floyd's daughters, and his youngest, Poppy, takes Laurel's breath away because the eerily precocious Poppy is the spitting image of Ellie. That's not the full summary of the back, but we don't want this video to be too long, so that's what I'm going to give you. You should read this book. A 4 out of 5. It was good, but it was definitely crazy. All right, guys, this is probably one of my favorite books that I've just read in general, because first of all, I love memoirs. Memoirs are probably like one of my favorite genres of books to read, and this is definitely one of my favorite memoirs that I've ever read, and that is Troublemaker by Leah Remini. This book, y'all, was so good. I don't know why, y'all, I sound so country. So this book, Troublemaker, is about her time in Hollywood and Scientology, but really it's just a memoir of her whole life. It's about her life before all of that, her life when she was young, to honestly her life up to the point that she wrote this book. And it's literally so good. Like, you have moments where you're going to be laughing, times where you're going to be very sad, times where you're going to be gasping like, oh my gosh, like what is happening. There is just so much in this book. She's so raw, she's so real in this book about like everything she talks about. She spills some of her life secrets that most people would not be willing to put in the book, and the reason why she did it was because apparently in the Church of Scientology, they know all your secrets and stuff, and you know you're encouraged to tell them like deep things about yourself, personal things about yourself you wouldn't tell people. So she already knew that when she broke away from the church that they would try to expose these things about her. So she pretty much wrote this book, one, to just basically expose herself about all of the things that she's done wrong, as well as expose the Church of Scientology and just like issues in Hollywood, and not so much really issues in Hollywood, but just like the issues she experienced in Hollywood. And it's so good. She talks about her relationship with J-Lo, like how they're best friends, and she talks just so regular about her. Like, it's funny because it's J-Lo. Like, yeah, it's so good. I highly recommend this book. I highly recommend this book. It's so good. I don't care what your genre of books is that you like to read. It's one of those books where I could not stop turning the page. I was consistently like trying to get through this book because I just had to figure out what the heck she was going to talk about next. And I would give this book a complete 5 out of 5. This book is so underrated. Like, I just really feel like a lot of people should read this book. It's so good. Another book that I want to talk to you guys about, I don't actually have on me right now because I accidentally left it at home when I went to go visit my mom at her house. So that is The Color Purple. So yes, I read The Color Purple, and y'all, it was so good, which was completely something I was not expecting, because you know, if you are African American, you know The Color Purple. You probably have seen the movie more times than you can count, and I'm not gonna lie, I have not been a big fan of the movie growing up. I was never really a big fan of it, and I didn't hate it, but you know, it wasn't like something that I purposefully would go and turn on. And I have no idea why I picked up the book. One day I went book shopping and I seen it and I picked it up, and then one day randomly I'm just like, I'm gonna read it, and it was so good. Literally at the top of my list of just like greatest books of all time literally would be The Color Purple. It is very similar in a lot of ways to the movies. However, I just think I prefer books anyways to movies, and I just love the writing style of I believe her name is Alice Walker. I believe Alice Walker is the author of that book, and she just did a phenomenal job of writing it. It definitely has some triggers in there. It's not for the faint of heart. This book, when reading it, to me felt like the beginning was like a rainy, cloud, gloomy day, more like weeks, that suddenly turned into a beautiful, like, sunshiny day. Just, that's the best way I could describe this book. Like, you read it and it's like everything that can go wrong goes wrong in this book. And I'm not talking about like the writer, like her writing is bad, but just like the lives of the characters, like their lives are so depressing and just so, there's so much turmoil, so much craziness, and then by the end of the book everything just gets better and better and better for the lives of the characters, and it really does end in a happy ending. And I just love the book so much. I'm not going to talk too much about what it's about because I feel like most people already know about The Color Purple, but I do want to hype up the book and say that you should read the book. Even if you haven't watched the movie, I feel like you should read the book, The Color Purple. It's really good. I believe it's also considered a historical fiction. So yeah, you should read The Color Purple, and I would give it a 5 out of 5. Last but not least, we have A Little Princess. This is another all-time favorite story, all-time favorite book for me. The story in general, first of all, let's just appreciate the cover of this book. It's like, y'all, okay? The back says, "If I am a princess in rags and tatters, I can be a princess inside." So I love this story since I was a child. The first time I ever seen the movie to this book was in the 1st grade, and from there I was hooked. Literally to this very day, I watch this movie all the time. It's one of my all-time favorite comfort movies to watch, just whenever I just want to get in bed with some blankets and some hot chocolate and watch a good movie. This is definitely one that's at the top of the list for me. I was not excited to read this book because I was excited to own it, but I was not excited to read it because I was afraid it would mess up my love for the story, because books and movies can sometimes not be the same. So I'm like, if I read this book and it's not similar to the story that I love from the movies, then it's gonna really just shatter my heart. And so I was very, very happy to find out that this book is very similar to the movies, but once again, it is better in my opinion. It's so detailed. If anyone doesn't know about the story, it is about a young girl who is very rich. She's very well-mannered, and everybody loves her. Everybody adores her. All the other little girls want to be her. And her dad has to go away. He sends her to, I'm being very vague on purpose because I don't want to like spoil the book for you. You know, read it for yourself because it's really good. But he sends her away to like a boarding school, and eventually one day, literally just like overnight, she loses everything. I won't tell you how or why she loses everything, but she does. She loses all her riches. She loses all her money. She loses all her pretty nice things, and basically is made into, I think it's called a scullery maid. Either way, she's basically made into like a, maid is probably even way too nice of a term. She's pretty much made into, okay, the woman that owns the school pretty much just makes her basically like a slave in her school, because she can't afford to live there no more, and she doesn't want her reputation to look bad by putting her out on the streets. So she just lets her basically be like a maid in this school, and everybody turns their back on her, and the world just becomes cruel. Like the same world that loved her and praised her and like worshipped her feet and the ground she walked on, literally just treats her like trash now that she like has nothing and she becomes this poor little girl. But the whole reason why it's called A Little Princess is because she believes that she's a princess not because of what she has or how rich she is or even when she becomes poor. None of that has nothing to do with being a princess. She believes a princess is about who you are deep down inside. And so when she was rich, everyone would call her a little princess, but when she became poor, the other little girls would be like, "Are you still a princess?" And she feels that she is a princess still, and she likes to pretend that she's a princess because it makes her warm and feel safe inside in spite of everything that she's going through. And she just keeps reminding herself, even though the world's so cruel and has treated her so unkind, that she wants to remain kind. She wants to help people, and she wants to still be well-mannered and still, you know, just be a loving person. And that's why I love this book so much. The message is just so beautiful, and it's definitely, I know it looks like a children's book, but I mean, it is a children's classic, but the actual writing of this book is very sophisticated in my opinion. It's definitely something that regardless of what your age is, I highly recommend you read this book. It's really good. But this book is about 230 pages. It took me 2 days to read this book, so I love it. I need to buy a regular copy of this one because this one's like my pretty collector's edition, but I want to buy a much smaller paperback that I can just carry in like my bag and stuff, especially when I travel, because I just feel like this book is so perfect, especially for times we're in right now, because it just has such a positive message that even when you're going through hard times and you're struggling, like everything will be okay and you can basically get through what you're going through. It's just so good. So yes, Well, you guys, that is all the books I have for you for today. Look forward probably within like a week for me to do a video where I talk about the books that I read for the month of April. I'm so excited to make that video. I'm so excited to just make videos about the books that I am reading or have read in general, and I hope that you guys stick around with me as I talk about these books. I would literally love for you guys to put in the comment section your favorite books and any books that you recommend that I read. I have so many books, you guys, that I still need to read. Yeah, and I just keep buying more books and buying more books, and I have no desire to stop. So yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful day or a wonderful night, and if you haven't picked up a book in a while, let this be your sign to go ahead and do that. Pick up a book and just read it and enjoy it, whether it's on Audible, Kindle, a physical copy. Go read you a nice book. You'll enjoy it. All right, bye guys.